Wrestling legend Hulk Hogan has died.
That's enough! I said!
In the quiet, sterile halls of Morton Plant Hospital, the final chapter of a wrestling legend unfolded far from the roar of the crowd. Hulk Hogan, known to millions as the indestructible icon of professional wrestling, spent his last moments not in an arena, but surrounded by monitors, soft voices, and the steady hands of medical staff. One nurse who was present during those final hours recalled the moment not with fanfare, but with deep emotion. There was a kind of stillness, she shared, like the world paused for him. Behind the muscle, behind the fame, was a man, tired, fading, but not alone. His final breaths were taken in the presence of compassion, care, and quiet dignity. A summer morning in Clearwater turns tragic. July 24th, 2025 began like any other typical summer day in Clearwater, Florida. The sun had already climbed high in the sky, casting its warm, golden rays over the tranquil coastline. The gentle ocean breeze stirred the palm trees, creating a soothing rhythm that complemented the distant calls of seagulls and the soft crashing of waves against the shore. It was the kind of morning that beckons people outside, to beaches, to backyard barbecues, or simply to enjoy quiet moments with family. Life felt calm, almost peaceful, but inside a modest, sun-drenched home overlooking the water, a very different story was unfolding. This was the residence of Terry Jean Balea, known to millions as Hulk Hogan. For over 4 decades, Hogan's name had echoed through stadiums packed with roaring fans, his presence larger than life. He was the towering hero who had body-slammed giants and energized arenas with his charismatic persona and unmatched strength. Yet now, the man who had appeared indomitable was facing his most daunting adversary, a failing heart. The peaceful veneer of that sunny morning shattered abruptly at exactly 9:51 a.m. The calm was pierced by the urgent ring of a 911 call. The voice on the other end was composed but carried the unmistakable weight of emergency. Though no name was disclosed in that initial call, those in the know immediately recognized the gravity. The report was of a cardiac arrest, and the man in crisis was Hulk Hogan. The race against time begins. Within moments, the sirens of Clearwater Fire and Rescue cut through the morning air, growing louder as paramedics sped toward Hogan's home. When they arrived, there was no time for ceremony. The front door burst open and the medics rushed inside, their equipment clutched tightly, their faces set with grim determination. What they found was heartbreaking yet surreal. Hogan lay still, his once powerful frame motionless. The vitality that had defined him for decades seemed to have deserted him in this quiet moment. Those who had watched him lift legends like Andre the Giant now faced a different challenge. Reviving a heart that had suddenly stopped beating, the paramedics knelt beside him and began chest compressions, steady, relentless presses into his chest designed to coax his heart back to life. The room filled with the sound of their breaths, the thud of hands against flesh, and the steady crackle of radio communication. It was a somber, almost haunting scene. A man who had never backed down from any challenge, now fighting for survival on a quiet floor, far from the roaring crowds and bright lights. Despite the intensity of the moment, those paramedics refused to give up. In typical cardiac arrest cases, after about 20 minutes without signs of life, professionals often cease resuscitation efforts. But Hogan was different. Flickers of hope, brief, fragile pulses, pushed them to keep going. Every beat was a reason to fight harder, every pause a call to press faster. Their voices over the radio conveyed not just clinical precision, but a personal resolve, as if they understood the magnitude of who lay before them. Relentless efforts in a community holding its breath. For more than 30 agonizing minutes, Clearwater paramedics gave everything they had. They rotated through cycles of chest compressions, administering oxygen and medications, clinging to every slight sign of life. Each movement was fueled by urgency and silent reverence. This wasn't just another emergency call. This was Hulk Hogan, a man whose image had adorned posters, action figures, and the memories of millions. Despite exhaustion, they refused to give up. Every flicker on the heart monitor brought a surge of hope, only to fade just as quickly. Still, they pressed on. When it became clear that Hogan needed hospital-level care, the team transitioned him to a stretcher, compressions continuing without pause. A video, later shared by news outlets, captured the haunting scene. Medics wheeling the wrestling icon through his home as CPR continued, unrelenting, mechanical, desperate. The silence of the house was broken only by urgent instructions and the rhythmic motion of their hands. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailed through the streets of Clearwater like a cry of defiance against fate. Inside that vehicle, the battle continued. The paramedics weren't just trying to save a man, they were trying to hold on to a legend, even as the minutes slipped away. Inside Morton Plant Hospital, the final battle. At 10:32 a.m., Hogan was rushed through the hospital's emergency department doors. Medical staff, alerted in advance, were ready, a team of doctors and nurses bracing for one of the most challenging cases of their careers. The emergency room, usually filled with a steady stream of patients and medical crises, took on a heavier, almost reverential atmosphere. What transpired behind those closed doors remains largely private, shrouded by patient confidentiality and the solemn respect owed to a man's final moments. Yet those who witnessed it described an environment thick with urgency and grief. Every procedure, every test, every effort was aimed at one goal: bringing back the heart of a man who had meant so much to so many. Despite the advanced technology, expert care, and unwavering dedication, Hogan's heart would not sustain. The cardiac arrest was relentless and unforgiving. After nearly 90 minutes of continuous intervention, at precisely 11:17 a.m., the medical team made the heartbreaking announcement: Terry Gene Bollea, Hulk Hogan, had passed away. The official cause, cardiac arrest. A community mourns and seeks answers. News of Hogan's death sent ripples far beyond Clearwater. The wrestling world was stunned, its brightest star suddenly extinguished. Clearwater Police Major Nate Burnside publicly confirmed that no foul play was involved, underscoring that Hogan's passing was the result of natural causes, consistent with his known medical history. The public reaction was immediate and profound. Social media exploded with tributes from fans, wrestlers, and celebrities alike, all mourning the loss of a man who had inspired countless lives. But amid the widespread grief was a quieter, more private sorrow. For the hospital staff who had fought so valiantly, there was the weight of loss mixed with the relief that they had done all they could. The families, friends, and fans were left to grapple not just with death, but with the final chapter of a complex life, a story of triumph, pain, resilience, and legacy. Hulk Hogan's passing was not only the end of an era for professional wrestling, it was the closing of a deeply human story. Behind the larger-than-life persona was a man who faced vulnerability, who fought his toughest battle far from the spotlight, and who left behind a legacy that would echo through generations. The man behind the persona. Hogan's health struggles. To truly grasp the weight of Hulk Hogan's final days, it's essential to look past the bright lights and roaring crowds and into the quiet, private battles he faced. For more than 40 years, Terry Gene Bollea crafted an image of sheer invincibility, the unstoppable, larger-than-life hero who seemed impervious to pain or defeat. But behind that facade was a man profoundly worn down by time, injury, and relentless physical strain. In one of his last interviews before his passing, Hogan opened up in a rare moment of honesty. During a conversation with reporter Chris Van Vliet, he was asked, "How much pain are you in right now?" His reply cut straight to the heart of his reality. "I'm in pain all the time, but I'm used to it." He described his daily routine, which started with 2 cups of coffee and 2 Tylenols. No powerful painkillers, no major treatments, just a quiet, persistent ache. When Van Vliet asked whether he would choose a life without pain or the perfect championship moment, Hogan surprised many by choosing the latter, underscoring the warrior's mentality that had driven him to push through adversity for decades. The long road of surgeries and setbacks. Hogan's body was a battlefield, bearing the scars of a brutal career. Over the last decade alone, he had endured more than 25 surgeries. These included 10 back surgeries, multiple knee replacements, and hip replacements. The physical toll was staggering. Each operation meant painful recovery periods, physical therapy, and the emotional strain of seeing his once mighty frame weaken. In May 2025, Hogan underwent one of his most critical procedures, a 4-level anterior cervical discectomy and fusion, ACDF. This complex spinal surgery aimed to stabilize his neck and relieve intense nerve pain that had hampered his mobility and comfort. The initial public narrative was positive. His representatives described the surgery as a success, encouraging fans that Hogan was on the mend. But beneath the surface, complications lingered, and whispers of concern began to spread quietly within wrestling circles. The surgery, while medically necessary, was a significant strain on his already fragile health. Conflicting reports and growing concern. The weeks following Hogan's surgery marked the start of a confusing and distressing period filled with conflicting reports about his condition. On one side were Hogan's family and inner circle, who maintained an optimistic outlook, emphasizing his recovery and downplaying any immediate danger. On the other side stood Bubba the Love Sponge, a Florida radio host and one of Hogan's closest friends for over 15 years. Bubba publicly aired concerns that painted a far grimmer picture. He claimed that Hogan had spent 6 weeks in intensive care and was on his deathbed, far from the smooth recovery his representatives described. Bubba's voice carried a mix of frustration and genuine fear, as he insisted the public was being misled about the true severity of Hogan's condition. Just 3 days before Hogan's death, Bubba's co-host, Lumpy, added to the alarm by claiming that Hogan had lost the ability to speak and was confined to a hospital bed in his home. This portrayal of rapid decline and frailty shocked fans and deepened the narrative divide. The conflicting narratives, a family's hope amidst growing concern. In the chaotic swirl of rumors and fears that surrounded Hulk Hogan's final days, one of the most striking aspects was the stark contrast between public optimism and private dread. Far removed from the grim reports circulating, particularly those broadcast by Florida radio host Bubba the Love Sponge, Hogan's family and closest friends insisted on a narrative of hope and recovery. On July 11, 2025, amidst mounting speculation, Hogan's wife took to Instagram with a heartfelt and detailed message that sought to put the rumors to rest. She insisted emphatically that her husband's heart was strong, that he showed no signs of brain damage or oxygen deprivation, and that the reports of him being in a coma were simply falsehoods. According to her, Hulk Hogan was recovering well from his recent surgery and was surrounded by love and care. This post, tinged with the natural hope of a family refusing to give in to despair, painted a picture of a man who, despite his vulnerabilities, was still fighting. Yet within days, the narrative would shift dramatically. Just 2 days before his death, on July 22nd, Hogan's former manager and close friend Jimmy Hart tweeted that Hogan was doing great and doing phenomenal after spending time with Hogan's son, Nick. Hart's message was laced with genuine warmth and optimism. The tweet, which he would delete after Hogan's passing, now reads like a poignant last public acknowledgement of a man desperately clinging to life. The public was left confused and heartbroken by these conflicting stories. On one side was Bubba the Love Sponge, broadcasting alarming claims about Hogan's rapid decline, ICU stays, and being on his deathbed. On the other was Hogan's family, steadfastly maintaining that he was healing and that there was no immediate danger. For fans and media, the contradictory narratives created a fog of uncertainty, making it difficult to discern the truth. The mask of invincibility, Hogan's public persona versus private struggles. Hulk Hogan's persona was one forged in the furnace of professional wrestling's bright lights and roaring crowds. For decades, he projected an image of unyielding strength, an indomitable champion who always rose from the canvas and crushed his opponents. This cultivated image was both his greatest strength and his heaviest burden. Admitting vulnerability or health struggles ran counter to everything Hogan had built his career on. Friends and insiders reported that even when Hogan was clearly in pain, he pushed himself to maintain appearances. He attended fan conventions, public events, and media appearances with a brave face, concealing the depth of his physical suffering. One close friend recounted how Hogan would quietly endure the pain, never complaining, always striving to live up to the legend he had created. This disconnect between public statements and private reality was highlighted in a revealing account from Jimmy Hart. On the evening of July 23rd, just one day before Hogan's collapse, Hart called to check on his old friend. When Hogan was unreachable, Hart spoke with his assistant, who assured him that Hogan was doing great. Hart passed along a simple but heartfelt message: "Tell him I love him." Those words, innocent and filled with affection, would unknowingly become the last message sent to Hogan before his final hours. The question of denial, hope, privacy, and reality. The tragedy of Hogan's final weeks extends beyond the physical toll on his body. It also lies in the complex emotional and psychological dynamics within his family and inner circle. Were the optimistic updates simply a genuine attempt to maintain privacy and dignity in the face of adversity? Or did they reflect an element of denial, an unwillingness to accept that the larger-than-life Hulk Hogan, the wrestling icon who had seemed untouchable, was being felled by something as ordinary yet ruthless as heart failure? The wrestling community has long been steeped in a culture of toughness, where vulnerability is often hidden behind bravado. Hogan was no exception. His silence about his condition was consistent with a lifelong pattern of projecting strength while privately managing pain and uncertainty. The reluctance to publicly acknowledge his deteriorating health may have been an effort to protect his legacy, preserve hope, or simply a coping mechanism in the face of mortality. Bubba, the love sponge, voice of warning and regret. Following Hogan's death, Bubba the Love Sponge took to his radio show with a raw mixture of vindication and sorrow. His voice, thick with emotion, expressed the bitter truth he believed he had spoken long before others would admit it. "I wish to God I wasn't right," he confessed. "Being right means we have a dead Hulk Hogan." Bubba criticized those who had denied his warnings, naming Hogan's family, Sky Daily, Jimmy Hart, and others. He suggested they had downplayed or even concealed the severity of Hogan's condition. His frustration was palpable, born from a place of genuine concern for a friend he had known for 15 years, and from the feeling that his warnings might have gone unheeded. This emotional outpouring underscores a tragic dimension of Hogan's final days: the missed opportunities for intervention. Had the truth about Hogan's condition been more openly acknowledged earlier, different medical strategies might have been considered. More aggressive cardiac monitoring, changes in treatment, or earlier hospitalization could possibly have altered the course of events. The medical reality, the toll of a legendary career. Hulk Hogan's body bore the scars of a lifetime in professional wrestling. The physical punishment endured over decades was monumental. His own admissions during the 1994 McMahon steroid trial revealed 14 years of steroid use, from the late 1970s through the early 1990s, a practice now well known to increase cardiovascular risks, including heart attacks and heart failure. Beyond steroids, the sheer number of surgeries, 25 in the last decade alone, tell their own story. Each procedure was not just a number, but a testament to repeated trauma and recovery. His knees, hips, back, all compromised through years of intense physicality. The spinal fusion in May 2025, particularly at his age and with a fragile heart, was a pivotal point. Medical studies confirm that major spinal surgeries in patients over 70 with pre-existing heart conditions carry heightened risks. The recovery process itself places extraordinary stress on the cardiovascular system, often leading to complications. For Hogan, this confluence of factors created what doctors call a perfect storm of health challenges. We truly appreciate your support. Subscribe and be part of our journey.